Cool. So, welcome to Building the Open Web, the new episode. We have today actually Matt again from Near, and we also have Margaret, also known as Coin Artist.
Hey guys.
Before we start, you can tell us a little bit about what you're known for in the space.
Oh boy, there's a few. um, so I guess going back in time to 2014, I started a career making crypto puzzles. So hiding private keys into artworks, both digital and physical. From there, I basically teamed up with other developers, and our projects became more complex, which eventually we found ourselves with a video game company in early 2018, which is Blockade Games. And we had this crazy ambitious idea that we wanted to make a MMORPG with token-backed game assets, since non-fungible tokens were really just taking off at the time. So we set out on that adventure, and a few years later, here we are. We're actually just getting ready for the first public rollout of Neon District.
This is super exciting. And when is it happening?
So January 19th is the launch date, and then we are actually or tomorrow, announcing a event called Neon Pizza Party. So I'm actually putting together physical pizza boxes that are very special and collectible, with all kinds of crazy assets inside. So that'll be a part of the announcement today, but include things like glowing neon jello shots for perhaps party purposes when we have the event. It's the last weekend in January. So we're really stoked about this first public rollout. We get to finally, and it's the free to play. So the model is complete in that we have on a layer 2 blockchain game. People can onboard without knowing anything about crypto, not needing to do anything with a wallet. You're playing the game. You'll be earning in-game assets and rewards that you can funnel into your non-fungible tokens, which are basically all your game assets and your characters. Level them up, and then you can trade them on. So we're on Matic, which is layer 2, or you can trade them on Ethereum, and you can also have assets on Ethereum and Matic at the same time, and it doesn't interrupt your gameplay.
And how did you get involved in art back in the day? If you were to go back even like before, how did you get interested in art?
So I went to art school. I've always drawn and been interested in been a creative, painted. I'd say my main medium was painting. Then I've actually always been interested in the crossover of the humanities, science and tech, interactive art. I remember in art school being fascinated with robotic arms, drawing artwork based on sequences like people walking across the room. So just the interaction with technology and art. And then I was a gallery curator for a few years, and director. And from there, actually, so I've always been a gamer also. And we just happened to have really kick-ass gaming computers around the time that script coins were taking off. Um, so we were mining with our gaming computers when we were not gaming with them. And that threw me down the rabbit hole of tokens, trading tokens, being excited about little projects that would pop up. I've survived a few bear markets along the way, but what the art, is inherent to who I am. So in thinking, I guess as an artist, I realized that the private key and the Bitcoin actually existed in both a digital medium, but it was also being recognized like in our physical world where it was a currency. And that was fascinating to me. So I had the thought experiment of what if, what if I encoded them visually using steganography? So steganography is the act of encoding data into visual information. Um, and so I've done that in a few different interesting ways, but I guess I thought it felt like a magic trick for me, because then when I launched my first crypto puzzle ever, I put it on Bitcoin Talk. I kind of made it mysterious and said, called it an alternate reality game because I was really interested in alternate reality games at the time. Anyways, it's what's known as a trailhead. So it was the start of basically a quest. And the end of the quest is, of course, being being able to pull out the private key and like solving the puzzle. Sometimes the puzzles are self-contained and on one art piece, and sometimes, like in the case of a trailhead, it leads you to another place, an event, something on the internet. Call it alternate reality game because it has a way of blurring reality with your life. So just making surreal experiences that are usually loaded with storytelling and thematics. So playing along those lines of the surreal with this new digital money, um, I also wanted to ask the question, like, if I basically embed money into an art piece, does that somehow make it more exciting as an art piece? Will people pay attention to my art more? So, which is almost like you could say, well, your art's not good enough then, right, on its own to be valuable just in its own merit. So it felt like a challenge to then put money into the artwork because artists have this like weird, well, not anymore apparently, but they used to have this weird like thing about money. Like, I don't care if my painting sells, it's not about the money. And so we've always had a weird relationship with money. And now we're seeing artists in the NFT space just being praised and like showered in money. Um, I don't know how that's going to impact, like, guess how artists feel about their artwork.
I want to actually ask about the first reactions. So this is quite early in the space. So perhaps you could like situate us in by just giving us like a year when the first artwork came out and talk about like the first reactions on the Bitcoin Talk forums, the reactions to, to I guess this artwork coming out, and B, just to like you as a person with background in gaming, humanities, things like that. How did like a bunch of Bitcoin, you know, OGs or whatever, hodlers, react to all this?
They loved it. So it actually became at the time in 2014 the most popular thread in Bitcoin Talk. I didn't realize what I was getting myself into. Um, so people were incredibly fascinated about just seeing Bitcoin used in this sort of way. There weren't very many creatives in the space yet. Crypto Graffiti was around at the time, and he was making very much Banksy inspired artwork, but we hadn't seen the crossover of like the nature of the crypto and the art being combined into a medium. I think that's what the Bitcoiners were pretty excited about. And I remember so the reaction was just incredible. We at one part of the trail, we had a Minecraft server, and it was designed with all of these puzzles involved as well to get to the next step. So you had to figure out how to get to the next step from there. Anyways, seeing all the Bitcoin Talk usernames pop up in the server in real time, and we had set the server up so it was insane. Like it reset every hour. It had incredibly hard monsters everywhere, and nobody had anything to fight or defend themselves with. And you couldn't transform the land. It's like we had played with a ton of stuff to make it like impossible. So people had to really collaborate as a community. And I think that was one of the first times we've ever seen the community I had ever seen the community engage in such a collaborative experience. And I think for a lot of people, that was the hook. It was like we presented this challenge, but nobody on their own was smart enough alone to solve and get to the next step. They needed each other. Um, so I guess that was the response, was all these relationships that came out of that first puzzle. Actually, they've lasted years. A lot of people from my community have stayed with my work and what I do. They're still in my community today. A lot of people that participated, I don't know if you're familiar with Bitcoin Mom and like Jack Mallers and like their family, but she was one of the pod leaders of a certain solving group, and like that relation, she actually bought that art piece. She owns that that painting. Anyways, it was an incredible introduction to building real world relationships that have sustained.
So you mentioned it was a trailhead and also like this alternate reality experience. What inspirations did you or the people you were collaborating with draw on to actually like orchestrate this whole experience?
Yeah. So, are you familiar with any ARGs?
I don't know if I am. Sasha?
So, a lot of game companies will do a campaign, like an alternate reality game, around the launch of a big title. Saw this with Halo. They did their ARG was called it's like either We Love Bees or I Love Bees, and it's this whole story that so they had this commercial for Halo, but then it had a couple weird flashes in it, or it might have even had like a phone number that blipped across the screen. And from there, it just was this trailhead of you're uncovering some story. And eventually you were led to a website, some bee farm, and it got really weird. People are physically mailed things that add into the story, and then it all ties into some sort of reward or like swag that ties into both the ARG and also the game company's new title that's coming out. We saw this with Blizzard, with Overwatch. They had and actually somebody in our community was involved in like that, building that ARG. So it's really neat, the different talents of people we've attracted to our community over the years, be it game developers or creatives. We very heavily focus on the cyberpunk genre. So Neon District is a cyberpunk RPG. And so using that as like a shared point that we all love, it's just amazing how many incredible people we have. Hackers, because of the solving, we have incredible devs that in our community that I try to reel in for different various projects when I'm given the opportunity. So, sorry, Matt, I don't know if I completely answered your question, but
I vaguely remember reading an article when I was like 19 or something about the Nine Inch Nails, and they launched like an album, and they did concerts where they would have USB sticks scattered around the venue, and they were like hidden behind toilets and stuff, and people found them, and then they start plugging them into their computer, and it boots up some website, and then they all go online and they try to figure stuff out. And eventually I think that one culminated in these people being kind of kidnapped from their house and like put into a van or something, and like driven across state lines to like a warehouse concert, like where there was just 40 people with Trent Reznor and the Nine Inch Nails, which would have been obviously an incredible experience. So I guess that's kind of like an ARG, right? Like,
totally. No, exactly. A lot of audio artists and visual artists, they will hide. So in the case of audio puzzles, like in this stereogram, you can see, or spectrogram, sorry, you'll see like hidden information that can convert into an image. We've done things like that with QR codes or sound files and things like that. But it is really interesting, or playing a song in reverse. There's a lot of creative things that people have done to hide. And
so time wise, like let's just jump around a bit. Like let's go all the way to present day, and there's lots of artists now who, as you mentioned, they are establishing somewhat of a relationship with money in terms of being showered in crypto with NFT sales. I guess I would ask, like, do you see there being like there's some stuff with physicals, like I saw that in the Beeple sale that happened on Nifty Gateway that everyone is probably familiar with. Um, do you see more things like more ARGs and like more sort of a wider experience for the NFTs that people are purchasing? Or like, do you just see this kind of continuing to be more or less like a digital art market for the majority? And then we can start to get into your games and stuff, which would be awesome.
yeah, so actually, I think the future of NFTs is definitely about experiences, unlocking what is your experience interaction with an NFT. We're supporting a project called Beyond NFT right now, which is it's basically a developer sandbox. You can take HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and turn that code into an NFT. So it renders from the code. It's not an image file. With that, there's all kinds of examples of things you can do. So you can have like an MP3 player. You can have a mini game that you actually interact with. It's an NFT, but you interact with it, and the outcome of that could be, and it can evolve based on your transactions. It can render in real time according to some sort of thing that you do. Honestly, if you think big picture and like how digital we're going, think about like a no code ability to put together memes where each component of the meme has a lineage about where it was derived from. So you have the parent and then token, but you can be borrowing, and then you have the composability of these different assets coming together to create a new item that can also be handled in a similar way. Like, it's just, with everything being token backed like that, and with the monetization vehicles that can also be attached to it, it's just going to get really interesting, I think. So I definitely think the future here, art is low hanging fruit for the for a non fungible token, but I think what's actually going to be big is going to be like even things like websites. Think of a no code website where you're grabbing assets that people are putting together, composing a website, and you have these tools that, yeah, I guess I'm really big on the no code feature that for the NFT space, because there's such a shortage of developers. So I think that we're going to see people put out those kinds of platforms and tools for users, because a lot of artists don't know how to code. You have a lot of creatives and content creators who just want to grab and go. So I think it's only a matter of time before that happens. And then, as you're saying, this crossover of what's possible with, like, are we going to see more ARGs and experiences around NFTs? I mean, I think definitely. I think the subculture that's happening around non-fungible tokens, I mean, we're having a cultural explosion because the artists are here in a really loud way. So they're going to be pushing the boundaries of what is possible. And digital artists have never had this opportunity to really monetize their work like this. It's usually commissioned or graphic design or something like that. But in this way, they're driving the conversation now.
What's also great about some of these things, like when you pull them into an ARG, it's almost like building that experience becomes easier. So I think about like wristbands at a concert, like with the physical ones, you got to deal with fraud. You boot up your own sort of QR code system or something like that. You got to pay some SaaS company, right? But if you just kind of tokenize it, then everybody just kind of goes online and they have to acquire the token, and then they just show up with their wallet and they beep in, and that is running on some blockchain. It's not your infrastructure. You don't have to worry about fraud or anything, because I mean, there's sort of there's sort of economic incentives backing the security of that network. So I think that these experiences are going to become like faster and more fluid as we sort of gain mainstream adoption. But I think you're right. Like it's very cliquey and subculture right now, but I think it's upon everybody, just like it is with sort of crypto as sort of a financial primitive. It's upon everybody to educate the masses.
So when you were talking about those experiences with the token, are you familiar with Block Party?
Yes, I've heard of them, but I've never attended or not exactly familiar with how it works exactly.
That's something they're focusing on. Actually, Blau, the musician.
Yes.
He works for Block Party, and he's been pretty big in the space, working on audio visual NFTs as well. I wanted to say something else in addition to that, but
well, we were talking about Beyond NFT, and I wanted to tell you that I looked at them like as soon as they came out, probably because of you tweeting about them, and then like as a developer, my mind just starts racing about all the possibilities. And I mean, immediately I thought, okay, this is just like some JavaScript and stuff. We could have basically, one of these Beyond NFTs could be actually like, a Game Boy emulator or something. And then there could be a bunch of these game cartridges and you could snap them together to play games and stuff. So, I mean, the possibilities are kind of endless, right? Like it just gets pretty wild there. But I think you're onto something too with things like no code. And I think it's the one called Avastars, which is the composable artworks, like with NFTs, like where you get to choose like what I think it's Avastars, where you get to like choose like which bits you want to like show as your NFT. I'm not sure, but I know that they're entirely on-chain artwork, and you have some configurability as to like how the NFT is presented. And so like if you own two pieces and I own another two pieces, we get to like make transactions and sort of change the composite, which is kind of cool. Like we get to kind of collaboratively like configure this avatar. I hope that's the right project.
Yes, and they are all on chain. And Jimmy is a big advocate for people being more transparent about what's on chain, what's not on chain, because it actually is true that today, if I wanted to go through some of my NFTs I've minted personally, I could just update all the metadata, which includes even the image files. And there's ways to have permanent storage on chain with IPFS, but it is interesting that I think a lot of people are buying and not knowing or completely educated about what they're buying. So being presented with a visual and you're like, oh, that's permanent forever, an NFT, and I own it. It's not really the case. So the metadata, it has to like, and if you had a game, for example, a game go down, you could lose all the information and the images if it's not supported.
Yeah, I think that is going to be a major sort of area of like debate and contention going forward. I know it already has, like it has since the days of sort of CryptoKitties. I mean, you know, the moment that they were sort of successful in November 2017, I think it was December that somebody posted an article on Medium, you know, being like, what are you actually owning here? And you know, just kind of scraping away at the layers there, which is important to understand. Like if you're really kind of gung-ho, you're participating in this ecosystem and you want to you know, you want to be like, maybe you want to actually have the IP, you want to remix your artwork that you purchased, right? Like, I mean, all sorts of questions start to get opened up here.
A remixing is going to be big. But when I was talking about that meme example, there's a project called Koji that does remixing right now, but it's not NFT backed, but it's open source. So you could go into their code base and you could add blockchain components to it. I've actually talked to the team, and they're totally down for someone to do that.
And is it remixing visual art or music?
Digital, just it's all digital, so visual. I don't know if they do any audio, but it's pretty neat because it's like a plugin and it works across all existing social apps. So you don't have to go to like the Koji app. It's just something that renders, and then you can buy the content right off Instagram, for example, or remix, so grab from, and it has lineage also. So it can trace back to what parent was, where a meme was developed along the way. You can grab from things. So it's a pretty neat concept. It's actually doing really well and taking off. I definitely think remixing and NFTs are going to be very hot, and as soon as someone does it.
So you also just mentioned something really interesting. I want to pull at it. So you mentioned like, okay, this Koji stuff, and then all of a sudden, instantly, it's on Instagram. It's up for sale. How do you view our space? Because you did talk about like provenance, and you said when everything's token backed and we can see where it came from, like a meme creator, for example, we have that provenance. We can actually kind of investigate. We can pull apart like the etymology of a meme. We can see how it sort of came to be. How do we get, as a community, like how do we get that stuff shown on other platforms? Because they're obviously kind of like, you know, Twitter's not just going to let you run a Beyond NFT like in a little tweet, like a little tweet window, because you know it's like running code live in somebody's, you know, phone or whatever. So how do we like show provenance? How do we like really communicate to people like when we show off our wares, like on platforms like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever? How do we communicate like that we own it?
That's a good question. Well, so the way Koji works is I don't know if it works on Twitter actually. But you could definitely show off things you own on Instagram, and that's just the digital content. I think that you could do this with NFTs. I don't think that actually NFTs would be gated, as long as it's, you know, you just have the window. You're looking at the window into the ownership of your wallet, right? You're not actually putting. I don't know, Matt. That's a pretty abstract. We gotta. I don't know. So we gotta play around and see break stuff. You know. I wanted to say one thing though about the experiences and tokenizing assets. So I've been working with MetaFactory, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They've provided for different hackathons really premium wear, like jackets, for hackathon winners. We actually got one at ETH Denver, which I'm really sad we're not going to have this year in real life or in physical space. But anyways, they come with a cold storage wallet and the NFT that proves the ownership of the article, and then also they have a Bluetooth and antenna, so you can do things like with AR software, have the augmented reality experiences with your wares, which is neat. So what we've been doing, so I have a project called Coin, which is my own like personal social token, and there's a strong overlap with Neon District. It's a syndicate within the cyberpunk world. We've launched a fashion line. Essentially, it's starting to roll out. So our designers at Neon District are designing outfits for me, my fashion line, and then the Decentraland actually has approved the wearables as well. So then now we're making the Decentraland versions of the assets, and then you can also so when you own let's say it's a T-shirt, high-end T-shirt, it'll be loaded with this NFT that, and with the antenna, like we can even gamify like where you are and like geocache, and you could run around a game that we create in physical space with clothing, and the game like could be rendering what you're wearing and what your stats are and attributes. And I mean, it gets really weird. But it would also recognize that then when you're in Neon District, the game with the swag, you are the owner of this and you're wearing it, and it in my mind this is going to be signaling your tribe. You're part of the Coin Syndicate. I'm hoping that with this Neon District universe, we're going to have other syndicates, other brands, other creators, content creators, and they'll be able to launch their own fashion lines. They're going to be able to launch their own syndicates, social tokens, private discords, so that when we are competing, we can actually launch events where syndicates go face off against each other.
Yeah, it's really cool. I think it's called Eden, right? Your community.
Yep, Coins Eden.
It reminds me a little bit of Cyberpunk 2077. How they have like 6 different neighborhoods in a night city, and they have like different gangs kind of controlling different neighborhoods. So like, would be cool if there is something like this where and this community. So like, it started living, from my understanding, on Discord. You partnered with like Collabland to kind of enable the functionality there. So what does the community does today, like before launch of Neon District?
So with Coin, we were doing NFT farming. We were using the token in really experimental ways, trying to cross over our love of NFTs with what can we do with NFTs and DeFi. So we launched a series of farms where this gets pretty complex, where you stake. So there's the major farm, which is when you're a liquidity provider for Coin on Uniswap, you get a token that says you're an LP provider, and you take this token and you stake it in the main farm. Now, the main farm, you are then earning Coin rewards over time while that token is staked. And then you also get a bonus reward token, which is cred, when it's for street cred. Street cred is not, we don't support a market for cred, but it's something where if we want to do a high-end exclusive auction or something that's really for our hardcore community members only, we can use where cred will be the currency that's accepted, because the only way you will have gotten it is if you were contributing to the ecosystem by being an LP provider. So from there, we have a series of farms that we would work with. We had a coin farm, a cred farm, and then a partner farm. And you would stake coin, cred, and we recently were working with RNG, a random number generator group, if you know them. It's Richard Kim's community. He's a venture partner at Galaxy. So anyways, you would stake these tokens, and then you would be earning shards of an NFT. So when I say shards of an NFT, there's an exchange called Niftex. Niftex takes anybody can take an NFT. Usually it's a high valued NFT, shard it into ERC20 tokens. Those tokens then represent fractional ownership of the non-fungible token. And then on Niftex, you will be exchanging these. People can offer a buyout. So if you're a shard holder, you can make an offer of a certain amount that actually then values your shards. So if no one buys your shards for what you offer, then the trade will auto execute over a 2-week window. So what you'll see is whales get really excited when there's something very valuable, and they'll be trying to buy out each other's shards. The more shards you own, obviously, when that deal executes, the more Ethereum you'll have. So it depends on which do you want more, the Ethereum or the whole asset itself. So we did that with some different cyberpunk artworks and artists, NFT artists in the space that really I've enjoyed. And during this experience of doing the NFT farms, actually, this is when the audio NFTs really started to take off. So we started finding our synthwave cyberpunk audio artists and pairing them up with our the different visual artists and making these new NFTs. So almost acting like producers in a certain way. And then Neon District itself, our game company has a few really great artists, so we're supporting them at various points and some of their high-end creations. But yeah, that's what the coin community was dabbling in. It actually, though, has gotten unsustainable because of gas prices. So at least on mainnet Ethereum, we can deploy these experiences to Matic or another layer 2, something cheaper. But I think that we have an 1155 contract, a farm contract ready, where there's various functionalities here, but you'd be staking, and then over time you are earning a variety of 1155 assets. 1155s are different than 721s in that it's a set that exists within the smart contract, whereas the 721 is the smart contract, if that makes sense. So you can be pulling from this variety of sets across all these different people that are staking at random. So it works like a little bit of a loot box that is paying people out over time. And your chance of what 1155 you'll get while you're staking is at random. So I really like the idea of that, but I think it's going to need to be, for it to be interesting, we have to work together on various partnerships and potentially game. I really want to play with games, the different games in the space for the 1155 farm. But that's ready to go. We'll be deploying that, and it's cheaper. You don't have to be switching the farms all the time. With the NFT farm, the sharding farms, people are weekly swapping in and out of the different farms, and that gets expensive. So yeah, we're going to be moving to some cheaper options.
Interesting. How do you manage both running game studio and having the community? It sounds like the community is, on one hand, it's part of the game. On the other hand, it's community tied to yourself, so it's like larger in a way. So like, how do you balance these things out?
So because of my background with making the different crypto puzzles, like I was saying before, our community is just really talented and creative. So a lot of times they will do work, or like, I guess the work that they're doing for Coin is bleeding over into Neon District and that work as well. So especially community managers. Our community managers are incredible for Coin. They've pretty much just become the ecosystem community managers in both like content production, marketing. So like the management side for me, I guess, in balancing is I'm really protective of the Blockade like development team. I try to isolate them a little bit so that they're not highly distracted by my whims that I tend to have. So, but the community, we have puzzle designers and whatnot. So we will do like almost little pods of creative projects, and I'll pull together talent from the community that I know and people that would be interested. And if they're interested, then we have all of a sudden a group of 5 that are working on a new puzzle that's actually going on right now. We have a puzzle that will probably launch in the next month with some really cool rewards that have been produced by another creative artist. So understanding your community and the talent around you and reaching out, Coin has allowed us to bridge from the game company and being this like isolated, centralized entity to, even though we had our organic community that existed previously, we weren't able to like engage them in the same way. And so the Coin has allowed basically us to bridge that gap. We can give rewards, incentives, have bounties, pay people for work that are the community members, so that it doesn't feel like they're just doing free work, but also hopefully it in some ways reflects back to them as everything grows and the project is successful, that there's value that they're also gaining over time.
Yep. How do you also think about game studio and running game studio? Like, what are the biggest challenges given how blockchain gaming is so early in the space? Like, what's the most challenging?
Sasha, you should have asked me that question 2 years ago when I was launching the game, or 3 years ago now. Oh my god. Like, so I laugh today because I'm like, the first thing I wanted to do in that bull market and when NFTs were happening, I'd always wanted a meta coin to exist. That's essentially what a non-fungible token is. And the first thing we want to do is let's go make an RPG. People that we had been really successful in making certain puzzles, really complex things. I thought like, oh, of course we can figure out how to make an RPG. That's not going to be like too far outside what we can do. That first year was just crazy. Game design is such an art. Like and then having an open ecosystem around your blockchain assets and games, there are so many little challenges to solve that even the main game industry stays away from having an open economy because it is just a can of worms essentially and can destroy a game very quickly. You can make it very toxic. So we have spent a lot of time thinking about how is this going to work? How is this good for the user? Is this fun for them? Will it be a good experience? And also thinking about all the things I would want to do as a gamer walking through this experience and things I want to be able to do with my NFTs. So like in Neon District, for example, you can compose your character. They exist of 5 separate NFTs that you compose, and that's what you're playing with. And then you play with a party of characters that are all specialized. And as you level them, they have what's called cards attached with them. So as you level, you get to pick new cards per character. So then when you go up against these other gamers, when you're in PvP combat, you're basically a hand at random that you play and from your deck, and you won't know what cards they have. So I'm excited to see what everybody thinks when it goes live and if they're having fun. We've seen some pretty great success in the private alpha. We did a couple years ago, we had a founders key sale where everybody picked up there was a wait list of a few thousand people. They purchased these keys for $5 each. And then since then, every time we've had something to demo or show, be it season 0 a year and a half ago to this private alpha, the key holders are the ones that are coming in and playing and giving us a good, kick in the tires to make sure everything's good to go. And it's awesome because they earn gems for this contributions on their keys. And now those keys, I don't think you can find one less for a couple $100s, which is pretty cool. Thinking about how we've been able to these keys have accrued value in that way for these experiences. And also we really value these types of users. They are very, very, very committed users. So as if they're having fun, that makes me excited for what everybody else will think.
Are there any points of advice that you would give like a game maker, a creative, an influencer who's looking to tokenize themselves? I mean, you've done it all.
So best advice is to move as fast as possible, ship as fast as possible in our space. In the game industry, you actually usually don't want to roll out with something until it's polished because your user doesn't understand what they're looking at. They judge everything aesthetically. That's why a lot of people will give the extra time to work out the bugs. I mean, if you look at what happened with Cyberpunk 2077, if they would have just focused on their PC release, which they admitted to giving the most attention to because they were pretty dismissive about the other consoles, you wouldn't have had this massive fallout. They probably could have been the best game of the year. But they spread themselves a little too thin. They also had multiple delays. We had multiple delays because we were pretty ambitious in what we wanted to do, and also there was a learning curve there. So if you are an experienced game developer, in our space, since the technology is also moving so quickly and changes pretty rapidly, you ship as iteratively as possible, monetize as fast as possible, also, and keep releasing in that pattern. I think there's more forgiveness in our space, especially to just because there aren't very many games. So people are willing to come in and try it. So use our community as your launch pad to get out there, and then eventually the target would be a mainstream community. But I think because we are pretty heavy in devs and creatives, we can kind of we can see through things that are not polished or competitive with a traditional indie game at launch.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Like you see it with the DeFi projects, like the sort of, get it out the door, get some farm things going, and then they're gonna build everything else kind of like on top of it and around their token and future versions and stuff. So that's great advice. Just get out there, like iterate and start to kind of slowly kind of monetize on your early game assets. And I see a lot of other people kind of following that pattern. What about like the psychology of managing a community, like having like you did mention that our space is forgiving, but we had James from Abridged and Collabland on just last week, and he mentioned that it could be really tough. Like it's like running a public company at very very early stage startup at the same time, which is grueling. Do you have any like advice or any sort of personal experience about the psychology of kind of like maintaining this community of token holders and people who hold your game assets?
I think so your communications are really important. You have to frame it. When we launched Coin, I multiple times said, you need to think of this like play money. It's a tool and we're experimenting, and it's highly experimental. This is not a place to go dump like a huge investment and you're going to expect a return. If you're doing it for that purpose, this is the wrong thing to do. You're doing this because you want to like engage and experiment with our community. If it has a positive outcome, that's just going to be a side effect. That's not like the intention. If you really just want an investment, go look at some of the larger projects that the space can offer, such as Bitcoin and Ethereum. But if you want to play and have a playground, then this is a great place to be. I think that if people really, and if you look at meme, right, they're very playful. I don't think meme holders expect meme to be like, maybe it could have a Dogecoin moment, and it has, but like it's not going, it's there because you like the community. So engaging with when I say release iteratively and quickly, and pivot, if it doesn't work, your users don't like it, throw it away and do something like, not the token, but like whatever the activity is. You need to work with your community to see what they like. You should be building for your community, and paying attention, like being able. So I've spent multiple years as a community manager for various projects. One of them was Decred, and I love the Decred project in the sense that they're able to take community that walks in the door, various talents, and put them to work. Token holders have a way of okay, I have this token now. What can I do? How can I make the project better? This has been a culture that we've had in our space since forever. So the more you can have people paying attention to talent that comes in, people that want to contribute, and giving them, like, you start out just like with anything, giving them a little bit of responsibility. And then you reward that by giving them a little more responsibility until they can earn their way. That's one of the best things about our spaces. You don't have to be some professional that passed an interview in order to participate. You get to be engaged by just showing up, and you have a talent and you contribute. And based on your contributions, you grow, and your fame within the community will grow. So I guess people, if they're in our space and they're really protective of what they're doing and they're not engaging their community, I think you're completely missing the opportunity and what makes our space special.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for that answer, because you covered a lot of really important aspects there. Comms, keep it playful, keep it sandbox if that's what the intention of the project is. If it's social, if it's community, keep it fun, keep it, definitely project like a not investment vibe, and not like we're not super big, we're just having fun here. And then how to tap into the people talent, like that's a really great insight. And you could tell that you've sort of done that yourself. I mean, you're you're leading an army basically, which is really impressive and really exciting.
Well, the whole reason actually even launching Coin was realizing I'm missing engaging the talent of my community, because I have, for years, it's not just been me. When we launch a crypto puzzle now, it takes a team of 5 to 10 people. like, and so that brand and that brand identity, being able now to share it with all these different contributors was really cool. We were a little nervous. I've always been a little nervous to have a token, and seeing it and the reception and how everything went, we didn't have any toxicity. We worked really hard to make sure people didn't like buy a whole bunch of this token and then come and like bang on our door because it's not pumping. Nobody wanted that in our community, and we had a well-established community too. So I think that's another point, is like the token should come after you have established people that want to be there because you're doing something interesting. In my opinion, otherwise people are, if they're only there for the token and the rise in price, I don't think that has any legs.
I'd be also curious, how do we bring more game developers overall into the space to come back to gaming? Because I talk to sometimes to people in the gaming space, and they're like, well, it's like best time ever to be outside of blockchain, because, like even now for the first time ever, like indies can get paid. Like Apple with Arcade is putting a lot of money into this. Google Play is considering this. A lot of sources of money for like large games, mid-core, and indies, and now and people there's like playbook for like like free to play existed for like 10 plus years. There's a playbook there. People understand it, even though it's competitive. And then you have blockchain gaming, which is like greenfield on one hand. On the other hand, like as you know, and I know, like investors are very skeptical. Not enough was like launched on kind of proof points. How do you get more game developers involved in the space that's seemingly kind of like very early?
We're exploring that actually with Blockade. We've had a lot of developers and creatives come to us that don't even want to set up a company. They just want to build, and they want to participate with us because they like what we do. So we're trying to think about, how do we set up entities under Blockade, and how does that ecosystem work, and like how does it fit with the blockchain space? So there's a lot of talent that is coming in. You're right that the gaming industry is completely taking off in a big way. Like, so the game industry is on an incredible trajectory, and then as tokens and that sort of experience, that user experience, that users might start demanding from their game developers, because we keep gamifying over here and showing, like, you see this with DeFi, but game mechanics and earning rewards, earning things that feel like digital assets and almost like game assets. So I imagine there's going to be a crossover there. I think it's going to take a while before the mainstream user really like cares if it's a token or not. I think there will be a tipping point when that happens, but I think we're a couple years away, a few years away. I do think that with this, like Matic, I'm sure Near is doing similar, but a lot of these networks are supporting the startups. You're right that investors, if you say you're making a game, oh my gosh, good luck trying to fundraise. Like, and most investors do not invest in gaming. It's usually just not a part of their portfolio, even in crypto investors. So they feel like totally out of their element when looking at a game, and is this a good game to invest in? So with that in mind, people that can help incubate and think creatively, like how can we use tokens or DAOs or these infrastructures that we have in place to support developers? We see this a little bit with Gitcoin with developers, but your grants are still pretty little, and making a game can be expensive. It's hard to have all this right skill sets in one person to make a game. So usually you need to be able to pay people. Sometimes you get lucky and you'll get two really top-notch devs that can do everything and they'll make a game. But if we want to grow the gaming industry, having funds available, or ways that, even like I was talking about, shipping milestones and being rewarded for hitting the milestones and unlocking more funds so you can keep growing your project. I think that our space, I know I'm looking into like how can we do more of that. Matic did a little bit of that actually with us, and the experience was really positive. So I'm excited for more games to happen. They just take longer too. Like we were talking about, you're not going to get a great game without at least 2 to 3 years of development time. I mean, there's always going to be the exception to that rule, but that's generally, and then a lot of games fail, they never make it to launch because it does take so long and they are hard.
So in this sort of challenging space, do you think that there's room, because we talked about no code tools for making NFTs, Do you think there's room, like you've got your ERC 721, you've got your 1155, you've got other standards and things happening. Ultimately, the goal is really the same, some fungible, non-fungible, or some limited edition kind of fungible, like a set of one of 50 or whatever of tokens. Do you think that like a higher level toolkit or something that an indie game developer could tap into, or even higher than that, like almost like a Steam for game creators, do you think those are going to be valuable sort of areas to pursue accelerants to the industry?
Totally. Well, when we're talking about remixing, there's no reason why you couldn't make these game NFTs, for example, that also have remixing components. And then you have that lineage of like a game that started this way and all the game mechanics went totally a different direction when people started remixing them. What's neat about that is the game industry already does this. They take a game formula that's winning. If you look at Farmville, and Farmville wasn't even the actual game model. Like they stole that model from something else, used it. They became super famous, but then a lot of other people adopted similar game loops, essentially, and mechanics. And so you see this with Battle Royale, with Fortnite. Fortnite was not the first Battle Royale game, and you have Apex Legends. There's lots of different games that borrow from each other, and then and so once we do have a no code like remixing, someone makes it, does the hard work. But if they can get those like paid back for all the people that borrow from their initial model, that would be really neat. Developers, I think, would love that, right? Like, it's not just ripping people off, essentially, but you can have fun with forking the games.
And given that your launch is coming up, like, where do people find more information online? We'll compile probably all of the links into the show notes, but wanted to see what are the main URLs you want people to keep in mind.
Yep. So neondistrict.io is from there. You can learn about Neon District the game. It also has a link to the portal.neondistrict.io. That is where the game takes place, and you can. And so on January 19th, you'll be able to see the battle. There's a battle tab where you'll set up your team, organize them, and you can go and battle. Currently in the Neon District Discord, we have private matchmaking. So if you were to go pick up a founder's key or you're experimenting with the game, you can go to our private matchmaking channel in our Discord and find other users to play. Something that's cool about Neon District is once you do, Matt, if you and I were to start a battle, we could take the link that's in the browser and share it anywhere on social media. And Sasha, you could watch our game in real time, which is pretty cool. So I'm interested to see where we. So you can play this. You can play this on any browser. So that includes mobile. So when we launch, it'll be mobile friendly as well. Oh, I guess another URL is our Twitter. So the Neon District RPG is our main Twitter. My Twitter is coin_artist. And if you're interested more about coin, my site is coinartist.io.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you.